Neighborhood Development Committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Hey, baby, you're so cold.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Gunther.
Here.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Here.
Chairman Cone.
Present.
5 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will first take up Board Bill 204, which is a board bill presented by Alderman Frank Williamson. It's a board bill that we've actually had before the committee previously, and this is a follow-up with the alderman and developer and I suppose members of SLDC with regard to tax abatement for the old Clark School located in the 26th ward. And Alderman, did you have an amendment for the board bill?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do not have an amendment.
Can we take a vote to put board bill 204 before the committee for consideration?
I move that we put board bill 204 before the committee.
Second.
May Madam Clerk please call roll? Carol's right there.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Chairman Cone.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Thank you. We have the, I guess, wonderful responsibility of having multiple committee with
Yeah.
hearings going on at the same
So you
time.
don't need.
We have 5, so we're okay for the moment. Thank you.
Thought we'd come in and.
I appreciate it. If we need you, we'll have someone run across the hall to grab you, yeah. So this was a board bill that we actually had before us about a month or so ago, and the developer was talking to us about his plans, and there were members of the committee that had questions whether or not we should actually be offering more tax abatement to the developer. And so we have the developer and the alderman before us who's the sponsor. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Alderman Moore. Oh, oh, okay, wonderful, Frank. Thank you.
Chairman, my only question would be if we have made any amendments.
I don't have any amendments to put forward to the committee at this point. That being said, I mean, Dale,
we
is
can
this
obviously
something?
prepare an amendment, we didn't know exactly what to prepare, you know, so whatever you decide today, if it's different than what the board bill is now, we'd be happy to
Give an extra one.
respond to that and get it
Need one.
ready for final
Oh,
second
thanks.
reading.
I have a few questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so Alderman Moore, did you have any questions?
No question.
Alderwoman Spencer, was that your
I'll
only
defer my
question?
questions for
Okay,
Alderman from the.
Alderman Gunther.
Well, no questions.
Okay, Alderman Oldenburg.
I think the last time we talked, we discussed some more detail around the budget, that there was just potentially a concern with the cost per square foot and the developer's construction number. I just did some quick back of the envelope with 12 years in commercial real estate banking, and feel like the number might be a little low to the developer. Now, he has his own construction company, I understand that, and there's all affiliated entities. But a 45,000 square foot, is that correct, of the building?
Yes, that's correct.
Rehab, I mean, the back of the envelope, if this were to be financed on a conventional basis, would probably be closer to $150 to $250 a square foot. And you're just much lower than that. I just, maybe you can shed some more color on that, because I think that was some of the questions that we had in our last committee meeting. And I mean, if your number's your number, that's good. If you've got a GMAX contract with your contractor, of course it's affiliated, so it is what the number is. But I was hoping you could shed a little more light on that for me, because I would just want to make sure that the materials are good, that there'll be a good constructed product at the end of the day. And this is in no way disrespectful, but that a project like this, especially if we're gonna be given tax abatement, is not done on the cheap. And I just wanted to have you shed some light on that, please.
My pleasure. First of all, let me remind you of what I said last time, that we are an established construction development, design, build entity. And we have a track record of successful, high-quality projects, award-winning projects. The one we did on McLeod won an at-home award as the best project in its class. I'm an award-winning architect across the country, and I only do good projects. Secondly, I invite you to come see it. It's more than 70% done. All the materials are paid for and in place. It's magnificent. You're gonna be very, very impressed. I mean, we're down to, I'm making this up. I'm a little happy. I hope I'm right. But finished framing, it's like 4 months of floor. So I'd say 12 weeks, make it 16, 17, we should be done with the project. So it's not open to guesswork anymore, it's a matter of fact, it's in place, it's there. Our original construction budget is established, the loan is in place, it's going through a dispersing company, the funds are there, you know? Now, I will say, I would say, I might be $300,000 low from the $4.2 million. In the end, because frankly, it costs more than I thought it would and unanticipated problems, we might be $4.5 million, all in, hard costs. And secondly, the $45,000, there's a gym in the back.
Okay.
And I'm only, at the moment, putting in 2 apartments, the rest is vacant space. So really, you should back that out.
Okay.
So then the numbers would go up a little bit, not a lot. But I didn't want to cheat it, you know, I play it as it lays. I gave you the area of what the building is, you know? And there's a potential those could be developed in the future.
Is it a new gymnasium? Was
Yeah,
there a
so it's not
recent
available
addition?
for tax credits anyway,
Okay.
all right? So,
But was it part of, I think there was like a 1984 bond issue that built new gymnasiums that had air conditioning in them in a school.
On 95 is when that gym was built.
95, okay.
Or 95.
And it just has the kind of faux facade on it to make it look a little
It's
historic.
brick, yeah, it does have that, similar to what the school looks like.
Yeah.
Brick, right.
But it's cinder block construction, I would
the
imagine,
gym was built,
like steel and cinder block.
it was like, yeah, no, it's a gorgeous building. In fact, my mason, who was doing the tuck pointing, built the original gym.
Mhm.
It's got the diamond,
Right.
it's called Baby,
Truss.
it's a, no, the
Brick.
The brick,
Oh, the
it's a
brick,
beautiful
it's
diamond
the,
pattern.
okay, the pattern of
Baby
brick.
bond, and
Yeah.
it's a funny name, I don't know why they call it that.
Kind of like an argyle.
So, and then finally, just to reiterate, you know, my explanation before, and here's what you said, you know, I have done this for 20 years, I have the same crews, my people love me, they give me a very fair price. They do it, because they can trust me, they never get stiff, they're paid on time, and they like to do good work, you know, and they know I'm gonna use them on the next job. So, I can do it, I have done it, and I'm saying this one is already done. And I say, I invite you to come out and look at it, I think you'll be very impressed.
Okay. Have you completed your part 1, part 2s of your historic application process?
I don't know the answer to that, I think so. I mean, it goes to our guy, historic guy,
Okay.
and Matt Bivens has everything he's asked for from me, and I'm pretty sure we have.
Oh, so you retained a consultant just to
Yeah.
run those drafts for you up at the
Yeah.
state, okay. I won't belabor this, I know we don't have much in front of us, but could someone from SLDC just talk about the plug number? Did those come from the developer, the federal and state historic tax credit amounts in there? And I don't know if those are the actual credits, or if that's the tax equity that's going to be in the deal, and what price per credit are we assuming there? What's the derivative of that number?
Yeah, so I just, I had to calculate that, the developer's numbers just had contingent on there. So I used, 20% of project costs minus the eligible costs. And then I think I used 88 cents on the dollar for federal and 86 for state, I think.
Okay,
Say it again, what percentage of the cost did you make us qualified?
20% of federal, 25% of state.
No, to get the qualified.
Percentage of the cost, I use roughly 96 or
Okay.
something.
Oh,
That may be
in terms of
why.
QREs, right? The qualified rehabilitation expenses.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep,
Okay.
and then 20% on federal, 25% on state, and then the dollars per tax credit dollar, I think I used 88 cents and 86 cents
Now-
for federal and state.
I'd just like to call some of your attention there. We didn't fill it in, we called it essentially deferred, because what it means is, we don't need it right away, we don't need to collect it right away. We're not gonna use it to finance this project. We'll pay it ourselves back, you know, as we can, as the project allows it to do,
Mhm.
you know? So, it could be in a year, it could be in 5 years.
So you have flexibility with when the historic tax credit equity comes in?
Yeah.
Effectively,
so- and
you'll
it's-
likely
it's-
pay down your loan with it?
It's kind of like a, you know, our equity includes that. So right now, we're putting in $1.5 million, and that's deferred.
Got it.
If we get it sooner, that will increase, but our $1.5 million will decrease. You know? So the total sum's gonna be the same that we put in.
No, I understand. You're just bridging it with your own equity at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Alderman Spencer, Alderman Gunther.
I have no
other
questions, Mr.
follow-up
Chairman.
questions? Okay.
Could I say one thing, just, I don't know if you're gonna give me a chance, or just now?
Yeah.
So I hope we, you know, I just wanna reiterate, it's us personally liable. We take huge risk. We're willing to stay in it for the long term. We're gonna be operating at a loss for a long time. So we could really use your help. Especially since I see the new, I mean, the tax was $7,000 a year. Now I see on here it's 80,000, you know, that's because you reappraise it as a occupied rental property instead of a, you know, unoccupied school.
Right.
But we can't afford it, you know. That's it.
So, thank you. And we've been through, you know, in our previous discussions about your budget and, you know, the time that it's going to take you to actually be able to cash flow the building and all of that. I did have a question either for the Alderman from the 9th Ward or SLDC, because I feel like we did a fairly similar project recently in the 9th Ward, a former elementary school building. But I can't recall how we proceeded with that.
Which school?
Okay.
The old Shepherd School on Lebanon.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Do you by chance recall like the square footage on that and the amount of money that was being spent on it though?
It was comparable per square foot. It was 4.8 million, something like that. Something like 4.8 million invested, and square footage of the building was around the same,
Okay.
about 50-something thousand square feet.
Okay. So arguably, this is in a, you know, more distressed portion of the city, being that it's kind of in the heart of North St. Louis. You know, and we gave 10 years, although it was 100% full at 75% for the remainder, but we gave 10 for the other projects. So in my estimation, I mean, it seems to make sense that the developer is already in a kind of precarious situation from a cash flow perspective.
And what you just said, thank you, it's a very hard area to rent, so it's,
Right.
we don't know, you know.
Right. I would entertain a motion for an amendment on the bill, if members of the committee are open to that, to amend this to 10 years at 100 and 5 years, an additional 5 years at 75%, for a total of 15.
I mean, so right now we're looking at a 10-year tax abatement.
At 100%.
Yep.
Right.
You wanna
So
amend it
as-
to what?
To a total of 15 years, but 10 years at 100 and 5 at 75% abatement.
Oh, 75, okay.
I would,
I'm
Mr.
just,
Chairman,
I mean,
I think, I hate to make amendments like that on the fly like this. We have an SLDC
yeah,
that
absolutely.
vetted the numbers here and came to this recommendation for us, and it just, I hate to make those types of major amendments on the
There's
fly.
also some concerns with the LCRA that they are, under the impression that we are not doing any tax incentives across the city of St. Louis as well, and so they're taking a very hardline approach at what they recommend, based off of feedback. But this is also, I mean, it's a highly graded project, you know, based off of, you know, the project itself. So, and again, I'm offering a suggestion just based off of, you know, what we've heard the last two hearings, so.
I want to add one more point, I'm sorry, I think I'm done, which is, we love doing this, personally, I love doing this, this is the most fun thing, but I can only do it if we're successful. And each time we roll into a bigger project, so I anticipate we're gonna do more, which is a win-win, you know? We'll take vacant properties off your hands and we'll turn them into, you know, but we can't, if we can't, you know, make a living at all, you know, turn profit. Okay, that's it.
I think this project certainly deserves some assistance from the city and by way of tax abatement. My caution is just if we're going to make amendments to add additional years in the back end, it should be done with rigor, and I don't know that we have that luxury here before us today.
Well, let me just, John has done the numbers at 10 and at 15, you might want to have
Yeah,
him share those
absolutely.
with you. Or I think he has shared
Yeah.
those with you, so. They're in the packet, so, there's one
15's
running
in
at
here?
10 and one running at 15, so you can see what the results are.
I,
And, you know, just let me say this. They are investing their own money, and this is a distressed area. The city of St. Louis is north of Delmar, and you have some just beautiful homes right up the street from there, Windermere, that you can probably get $500,000 for if it was south of Delmar. But that being north of Delmar, the real estate value is very, very low. And I'm sure SLDC can contest to that. So, I mean, I think it's 15 years, you know, 100% at 10, 75% at 5. I think it's an excellent deal.
Mr. Chairman, do when we came in this morning, the developer had an expectation of the 10-year, am I right? Or are the numbers working okay at 10 years?
No,
And-
well, that was the challenge that we had at the last committee hearing when we were talking with the developer. The developer was going to have a difficult time cash flowing the property for a number of years after the development had completed, due to, you know, potential issues with being able to rent out the property. So, you know, if you can't get up to 75% lease threshold, you know, it's going to cause some pretty, enormous considerations with your cash flow. So considering, you know, the area that they're investing in and, you know, the investment that they're putting in, which is, you know, either comparable to or maybe a little bit more than what we've done in other elementary schools in the area. You know, it, to me, would make sense to reevaluate, you know, the.
So that's what made you give a 5-year incentive,
Additional.
10, an additional 5,
additional 5.
but at 75%.
At 75.
instead. Mhm.
We're gonna have that written, it's gonna be printed.
Well, and so I guess that would be my question to SLDC, is if this is a route that we're going to pursue, is that something that you all would be able to do before we close out for, you know, or adjourn for spring or summer recess? I mean, he's saying that he has about, you know, 15 more weeks left before project completion, so
Oh, yeah,
obviously we
well,
wanna.
what it would be, I mean, it's kind of up to you all, it would be second read this Friday.
Mhm.
I think,
If we go through
If we
it today.
if we
yeah,
pass
if
it
you,
today.
either way, whatever bill comes out of your committee today could be second read on Friday, either as 10-year or as a 15.
So, but I believe the question that I'm asking is if we were to hold the bill today and wait for an amendment,
No, then it
So-
it cannot get out.
but this has already been publicly heard,
It has.
so we don't need to post it again for another notice, because
We
this
do.
is the second time we've heard it.
Well,
Right.
providing that it gets out this session, you don't have to post it again.
Right. But, I mean, Dale, you realize, when we go down for spring and summer recess, it does not mean that that's the end of session. Our sessions are a 2-year-long session period, so we're actually
No.
in the middle of our, yes, we are. our sessions run from election to election cycle. We don't have an election cycle until 2019. So we actually have another year before session ends, so the board bill numbers will continue.
The 10-year work.
I'm sorry, but I don't think
Like-
that's the case.
They want the
So what,
plus the 5.
when we go down, when do the board bill
Okay,
numbers
15.
restart?
10 and 100.
First meeting
Why
of
didn't
the
we
new
make the
session.
amendment?
Yeah,
to
the new
bill
session
So-
begins on, I think,
I
the
don't know.
17th or 18th of
As
April, and
amended.
that's when you'll have the
When we
numbers.
introduced
I thought
board
Lou was
bill
gonna-
like that last.
Oh,
should
Friday.
be
sign
added.
die, right.
Yeah, sign die.
Okay,
stop.
so
When we
In
came,
order
if
to pass
that's
it out.
the case, then I'm trying to do the time frame in the back of my head here.
Well, what would
So-
happen
but I'm
is,
just confused.
if, assuming a bill comes
Why we didn't
out
prepare
of this
this?
committee
We were
today,
planning on doing
it would be second read on Friday. And at that point, I think the alderman could ask for suspension of rules, and it could also be perfected on Friday.
Correct.
And then when sine die comes, which I think is the 16th or whatever, it would get its final approval.
So it's Tuesday. If we were able to have a committee hearing Friday morning, or are we not doing those anymore?
No, if you want a committee meeting,
Okay.
But I think what we have to do is get it as amendment. Am I right, Mr. Chairman? In order
Can't
to-
you produce an as amended today?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
well, we can't have that printed today.
If a majority of the committee feels comfortable moving forward with that, I'm just, the Alderwoman from the 20th Ward had some concerns, so I wanted to make sure that her concerns were addressed.
I'm just confused. We have a 10-year tax abatement in front of us,
Great.
and we came to hear, we had an opportunity several weeks to provide an analysis on a different type of redevelopment plan, and we didn't produce
So-
it. And so when we came here today to take a look at a 10-year tax abatement, and now we're amending it on the floor of the committee, I'm just a bit confused as to what the expectation from the developer was coming in today, if he was expecting to, again, hear the 10-year, and the 10-year works for him, why we're kind of on the fly.
So, I mean, if I may, the developer, when we spoke after the last meeting, shared that they're happy that the city of St. Louis is supporting their project and are willing to work with a 10-year abatement. However, it makes it financially burdensome for them, and they were not even presented when they first did the application with the opportunity to have a 15-year abatement. And so, that's why SLDC has since reviewed and offered their analysis on having a 15-year as well.
Where's that?
So it's in this packet that has the,
Oh, you're right. I'm
so
sorry.
it's,
And I think that one was based on 50%, wasn't it, John? Yeah, 50% for 5 years.
Okay.
So what is the recommendation from SLDC at this point?
Well,
So-
What I don't,
L-
if LCRA is recommending.
SLDC mostly stays with the LCRA recommendation. The LCRA board hasn't re-reviewed this alternative. And so SLDC, I mean, Dale, if you all.
No, absolutely, LCRA recommended 10 years, but
Right.
as a staff, I think we would be fully supportive of a 15-year tax abatement because of where we are, and, we're trying to reduce the length of tax abatement, but not as you get into the north side neighborhoods. We're fully supportive of granting a full tax abatement, and 15 years we'd be very supportive of that. We have no objection to that.
My only objection is just that we need to add some science behind what we're doing here as far as incentives. And I don't wanna set a precedent moving forward where in committee, we are adding additional years of tax abatement in a general sense on a sort of an ad hoc basis based on, hearings. But, and it would be my preference in the future, if we were gonna amend something like this, we come with an amended version as an option, fully presented, so that we don't have to come back for a third hearing on a tax abatement bill. That would just be my preference
I
moving forward, and hence my confusion with this particular
Wholeheartedly
bill.
agree.
I do agree that, we should be looking at ways to make the project work
And
for
it's
you. It looks
just
like a great project.
Partially, my fault in the developers, because they had to rework the numbers, so, it took a little time, and that's why that's
Frank,
why it
did
was
you
the
know it was gonna
delay.
be amended before we got here today?
Well, I knew we were going for 15 years instead of 10, yes, but I wasn't sure we were gonna have this hearing today on this bill, because they had to rework the numbers to get it to Dale. And I didn't know if that was gonna be enough time to do that, we might have to delay it, but they did get their paperwork in, so that's part of the
We just ran the
situation.
numbers yesterday.
Yeah, they just turned the numbers in yesterday, so that's, normally this wouldn't happen, I understand you make a valid point. But, them getting the numbers in at a rush, you know, period, that's why we're at the stage where we are right now.
You wanna take a break?
Is-
Sure.
Just real, and this
We'll
might
go
Terrence
hear
here?
the next
simple
board bill.
question here, but
We can make
Yeah.
amendments while we
on
do
the
that.
bottom here is break-even year. Is that break-even year for the developer?
It's for us.
Yeah.
It's for us, okay.
It's for us.
I'll run a meeting for them.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you're talking, we can go on to the other bill, and during that time, I
That's-
see, I don't know what the protocol
Yes,
is on the as
so,
amended.
the clerk just went to go find our legal counsel, so
It's
that,
in legislation.
that's fine. And we'll borrow him from legislation for just a moment while he drafts an amendment to the bill. And I think what we'll do is go ahead and proceed with the, SLDC, version of the 15-year, which was at, Jonathan was at a 10-year at 100% and 5 years at 50%. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and instruct our legal counsel to draft the amendment for that. And then,
Was it 5 years at 50%?
and
I
it'll
mean,
be,
$75.
it'll be a total of 15 years, but it'll be 10 years at 100%, and the following 5 years after that 10-year at 100, it'll be a additional 5 years at 50%.
I thought it was
Said
at 75.
No.
So I mistakenly said 75%, but SLDC worked numbers at 5 years at 50% based off of the numbers that you provided to them yesterday or the day before.
Who was the initiator of the amendment? Who asked for the amendment? The developer? Did you ask for the?
We expressed a hardship. The board was
Right.
sympathetic. It was kind of a give and take at the last hearing,
Mhm.
so.
So, Mr. Chairman, you recommended it?
I offered it as an opportunity or alternative, yes.
Originally, I
like
wanted
the
them to
fact
give
that
15, but.
our numbers
Um,
are numbers.
It's
We can come with that.
What's that?
probably
Like the
worth
fact that
looking at
50% numbers are.
Yes, I agree.
the two different versions of this page.
Yeah,
So the one that says 261 is the 10-year, the one that says 318 is the 15. So what we're talking about here is $50,000 extra dollars in tax abatement in net present value. It's not a huge number, that's why the score doesn't really change that much. It's also why the developer's return basically doesn't change either. Developer's return, because you're talking about tax abatement, that effectively doesn't really affect their bottom line until year 11, right? So like, nothing really changes with our financials really till year 11 between these two alternatives. Because they're gonna get 100% for the first 10 years,
either way.
either way.
I'm with you.
So, now granted, their rate of return there is their rate of return assuming the historic tax credits. Without the tax credits, yeah, the rate of return is like 2.2%. It's really low. 2.2 and 2.3, I think. But anyway, so yeah, so I would, I don't, the only thing from the city's perspective, I mean, if the years to break even, which is, based off of our model, does increase significantly, but going from the 10 to the 15, it goes from, I think, 23 years to 28 years or something, but, yeah, 23 years to 28 years. But, I mean, in this part of the city, it's like, getting to break even at all is kind of a good thing,
Difficult,
you know?
to say the least.
So, and hopefully, you know, it could be something that helps get other parts of this neighborhood to break even faster too, so that's something to take into consideration. So I mean,
For those that aren't familiar, I think that a lot of us are, there's actually a lot of buildings on this stretch that have been formerly institutional use that are either underutilized and, and vacant, and so I think that, having projects like this, present an opportunity for catalyst for other projects in the future when you're starting to stabilize areas, I mean, and it's a beautiful area, it's just, it's, maybe a little undervalued, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I do not object to anything, I just wanted it recorded, that's all. Just wanted substantiated that we got it down as amended. I do not object to what we're trying to do. We just need to make sure that it's recorded and it's properly done and documented.
Absolutely.
That's all. So we just put an AA on it.
Sounds good to me. So we'll go ahead and just put this to the side for the moment while we work on the amendment, and then.
We're gonna conclude it today though, right? We
No,
don't
it
come
does not.
back.
We have one more board bill. Alderwoman Navarro has a board bill that's before us this morning, Board Bill 266. So we'll go ahead and take her presentation on that board bill, and then we'll go ahead and work on the
We'll
amendment
come back to
here.
this one.
What should I do?
I'm going.
Go away or come?
You can just sit on the side if
tight.
you don't mind, and we'll work this out here in a minute.
Dale can change these buildings and stuff, Dale can.
Can we move?
Okay.
No, why don't you stay right there?
We need you.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
So
Wow, this is really.
to basically change whatever.
Okay, you and Dale.
Maybe,
Good.
yeah?
Yeah, I got pictures, you
Oh,
see?
yeah, of course.
Well,
if you don't
I don't know things, but.
Sorry, cameras are probably still going.
Okay.
When'd you have a baby, John?
The end of November, right before Thanksgiving.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Alderman Moore, do you wanna take one of these and
They were.
pass it down?
Oh, I know.
Actually, can I hold on to one of them?
Upside down.
Carrie, can you pass me one?
Need one.
Thank you. You ready?
Proceed, Alderwoman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, committee members. We are here today on a project at 215 York Avenue, so this is in the central west end. It's a little cut-through street between Lindell and Maryland. It's currently a vacant lot, there is a vacant commercial building on the parcel as well. And what's proposed is a 192 hotel room. So this, like I said, this is a little cut-through street. Most people kind of think of it as an alley. There's a,
About a chase.
it's behind the Chase. So this parcel, across the street from the parcel is the Argyle Garage. And then behind this parcel is the garage for the Chase Park Plaza. So it's, like I said, it's a cut-through street. This hotel would be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. The Chase is right around the corner. One thing that this does for the city is the Chase has a lot of conference room space, but they don't always have enough beds to accommodate larger conferences. So this would actually be a welcome addition to the neighborhood in that respect as well. And I do have the developer, Sam Koppler's here, who can talk a little bit more about it. It's an AC Marriott hotel. And the thing that I think is really important today for you all is that we're doing something a little bit different. It's called tax assurance. And in light of the conversations that this body has had about being more strategic in terms of where we use incentives, and knowing that the Central Corridor is an area that has benefited from incentives in the past, what we are looking to do is tax assurance, and I can let Jonathan talk a little bit more about it. But essentially what it does is make sure that there's still revenue being collected for the schools and for the other entities. But it does give the developer a little bit of assurance and predictability that allows them to take on some risk with this project. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it over to SLDC for numbers. Or Mr. Koppler's here as well to answer questions. And we do have some nice, beautiful boards, if you'd like to see what it's gonna look like. We did have a
We do
neighborhood
love
meeting.
pictures,
Bring on
We
the
had a public neighborhood meeting.
Dazzle us with art.
Just be careful that you're not covering the camera.
Oh.
Because we do.
So, as Heather mentioned, this boulevard right here is Little Boulevard, and then the Chase Park Plaza is in the background, not really shown. The site that this is on, just to kind of give you a little background, my grandfather built the Chase Hotel. Back in the 1950s, he launched KPLR TV, and the building that's there now was the old KPLR studio. The studio was designed where he could run the cameras from the studio to the hotel when they did talk shows and everything like that. They actually hosted the Miss America pageant on the pool deck in the 1950s, one of the only times it's been held in St. Louis. But there's a little odd history there. And then, of course, more recently, we had Wrestling the Chase there. So there's a lot of history there. But the challenge of building this is the structural system is the same as a Course and ballroom. So as soon as we got our engineers in there to tear down the old studio, they've determined that essentially if we tear the studio down, the Coruscant Ballroom as well as the Chase parking garage will be structurally at a disadvantage, to say the least. So there's a lot of shoring and a lot of engineering that has to go in to the York House as well, just to shore it up. So the demo period is gonna take a lot longer and be a lot more expensive than we anticipated. We'll be underground for about 3 months, when typically it's, you know, a month period. To give you a little flavor of how the hotel will lay out, because it is a unique layout, which isn't most ideal for a hotel, but you know, it's a very strong site, and we're excited about the idea of filling in this, as we call it, the missing tooth of the block. These two, so this is York right here. There's 2 driveways right here that we own, however, the Chase has a surface easement. When my grandfather sold the Chase Hotel, he thought he'd expand KPLR on the site. So he maintained rights to build over these driveways, so we have to keep a 16-foot clearance. So the other challenge with construction is we have to keep one of these driveways open at all times. So we're gonna have to do some gymnastics with our construction to figure out how to maintain those driveways. One thing, you know, this is the decision of the Chase and the condo owners, but if we can convince them to say, okay, we can knock this out a whole lot faster if we can close both these at the same time, you know, it's in both of our interests. So that's to be worked out. We're still working through our staging and our logistics with Parrot Construction, who's the contractor. So effectively, there'll be guest pull-up right here. There's a breakfast lounge now. AC Hotels, I know there's one of the boards for downtown, and then we're the development team that's doing the project in Clayton as well. It's a very, very cool model. It's kind of, you know, I think where the hotel industry is going, where very, very high-tech, up-to-date rooms, but there's no, it's a select service hotel. So there's no room service, there's no, you know, it's pretty much just a bed and a shower. But they do have a small little bar in the lobby. We love this hotel flag for this location because there's so much around in the neighborhood. There's, you know, restaurants, bars, shops, everything that, with 192 rooms and we're at full occupancy, we look forward to dumping out, you know, 250 people a night into the Central West End. So we think it's a great fit. Of course, we've got the investment in York House to the south, as well as Maryland Plaza to the north. And about 15 years ago, we started the Maryland Plaza redevelopment project with the long-term goal of really making the Central West End a 18 to 24-hour neighborhood. The neighborhood's evolved, it's come a long way since that time, but you know, as excited we are about this project, I just want you all to know that, you know, we're in this for the long term. This is close to 100 years our family's been in this neighborhood, and so we obviously want to do what's best for it, and we think this is a great use for this site. So I guess we can kind of talk with Jonathan in SLDC about how we came about, you know, where we are with this incentive plan.
Yeah, do you want me to go into the numbers?
Absolutely, please.
So, yeah, so what this is, as Alderman Navarro mentioned, is tax assurance or tax certainty as opposed to tax abatement. The way that it works, just so you guys, because I know a lot of times this question comes up, the way that it works is that we actually use the tax abatement structure, but then we have an agreed upon set of pilots that the developer is going to pay. We calculate those pilots out to be equivalent to what we in the assessor's office believes is what full valuation would be after development. So essentially what happens is the developer pays the taxes as they would normally be up to the point of where the hotel stabilizes. And then at that point, we cap growth on the taxes at 1% a year. So so in this case, I've got some numbers that I think are, do you want me to share the per room comparisons that we emailed you? Or,
Oh, sure.
Should we talk about the pro forma and just how we came to the number, or do you wanna, or is that where you're going?
Sure, yeah, why don't we talk about the pro forma first. So, I guess what has really happened, when they originally came in and we ran through the numbers, we looked at their, even before, with the full tax abatement, which that tax abatement was valued at $4.8 million for 10 years at 100%. With full tax abatement, because of the density and the amount of revenue it was going to put off, it still had a very high score, like 4.75 out of 5 stars or something like that. But their rate of return, which is sort of like the second thing that we look at to try and verify that it has a good but-for, was very high. It was 11.1 unlevered rate of return, and our market data shows that the typical range for hotels is between 8.3 and 11.1, so they're at the high end of the range. So we came back saying, well, look, this is a really good rate of return to the city. We definitely want to encourage this project, but we can't see giving it necessarily tax abatement because the return is so high. I think with the tax abatement, the return was something like 12 or 13%. So it was, above the high end of the range. So we came back and we said, and actually this was something that's been modeled in Kansas City. They've done it first, and we're sort of copying off of them, but they did it for a project developed by Opus there. It was not a hotel, but it was a residential project. And the idea, again, is just to, as I've said, to keep the taxes at what they would be, but to give assurance to the developer that they know exactly what their taxes are going to be for the first 10 years or whatever the project life, which then helps with financing. So you can see on the second page here, on this page, that the tax assurance value is, in present value, is worth about $278,000 to the developer, as opposed to the $4.8 million for tax abatement. So I think the next big question that I would have if I were you, and I'll just go ahead and answer it, is how do we know that we're getting to a valuation that is correct? So what we did was we had a market analysis done. The developer paid for the market analysis. However, we agreed beforehand what hotels we were going to include in the market analysis. Obviously, if you choose hotels that are not comparable, you could end up with something that's not accurate. So the hotels that we chose to compare it to were primarily the Embassy downtown, the Hilton downtown, the Chase Park Plaza, and the Westin. Is that? Yeah, the Westin, right?
The Four Seasons in there too.
We did the Four Seasons and we did the Courtyard. Those two were sort of like, Four Seasons was higher than we thought and Courtyard was lower than we thought. It was basically to blend it in. The main reason for doing that was to get to at least five area, or five
What about the
data points.
Parkway?
That one's tough because it's owned by BJC, and so
Okay.
most of the rooms are kind of in their own, pool, and I don't even know if they publish their rack rates.
So we used the market data to come up with an analysis, and then after the fact, I went back and compared it to what those other hotels are paying in taxes per room. So again, the stabilized year is 2021. So I had to take what they're currently paying per room, and I had to adjust it for inflation. But this hotel in 2021 will be paying $108,000. $108,398 per room. In comparison, the Embassy Suites is going to be at $107,222. The Hilton Ballpark is at $99,417. The Chase is at $105. Wait a minute, let me see. $113,765. And the Westin, I couldn't do a comparison because they're under tax abatement right now. So they're right in line with these other hotels in terms of taxes per room. So anyway, so that's kind of
Sounds
the.
like they're on the higher end of it, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Yeah,
Sounds
they're
like the Chase
they're
is
just
the only
below the
one that's higher.
Chase. They're just below the Chase and right in line with the Embassy.
Okay.
So
All right,
Hilton
well,
was a little bit lower, but that's I think partially because they've got a little bit older building.
I see all of my committee members fervently writing things down, so I'll let them have their opportunity to ask some questions. So we'll go ahead. Alderman Moore,
No question.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is more in a general sense. how do we determine when how did you walked through this a little bit, but the determination of 2021, when the project has been stabilized, as you kind of called it, how do you determine that?
The primary thing we look at is when the developer projects to hit sort of stabilized occupancy. So their stabilized occupancy rate was 74.5. Once they hit that number, that's basically where they're even with the market. And so at that point, they wouldn't expect their occupancy rate to improve year by year as a percentage basis. At that point, their growth is really just based on what they can get by increasing their prices.
And then another general question, we do a lot of incentivizing the building of hotels in the city, and my concern, I've mentioned this several times, is whether or not we have a plan, for how many hotel rooms the city needs and projecting that forward. I think to just kind of willy-nilly be continuing to build hotels without a real understanding of what the market in the city and the region should look like, and to be building towards a capacity that we've kind of identified, is a dangerous thing to do. I would hate to see this not be successful simply because we've also incentivized 10 other projects in the region. So kind of having that market looked at holistically, I think is something that we absolutely need to do as a city, as a region moving forward, especially as we're gonna continue to provide incentives to build.
So, and if I may, I believe the CVC has done studies, maybe not to the extent of, how we should be incentivizing hotels, but, they do a market analysis in terms of the conventions that come into St. Louis and the ones that they want to recruit to St. Louis, and the number of rooms that those conventions are normally looking at. And so, I'd be more than happy to have Katie Ratcliffe, who's the CEO of the CVC, come in and talk more to that aspect of things as well.
I think that's a great component to taking a look at how many hotel rooms does the city need? Where do we want them to be? How dispersed throughout the city do we want them, and that sort of thing, so that we can have a good comprehensive goal that we're working towards when we're trying to build new projects like this, especially given the risk that people are putting into building these. We don't want these to not be successful simply because we've over-incentivized the building of hotels in our region. This looks like a good project, and I really applaud everybody at the table who's taken a unique and different approach for the city through the tax assurance model. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Respond on a couple things. Just so, in terms of like the study and everything, you may have some interest in the Urban Land Institute is having a presentation this Thursday, I believe, at 7:30 in the morning. It's this Thursday, right? Are you guys going? Anyway, so I think it's this Thursday at 7:30, and they're going to be presenting on what is driving the hotel boom in the city of St. Louis right now, and really in the region. So they're going to really be digging into those numbers quite a bit. The other thing I think that, and I agree with you, I think we have a lot of data that we've looked at. I know that we've got the Johnson report that was done as part of the CVC study that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, that has a lot of hotel data in it. But I think a couple things to keep in mind is that the hotel market is not strictly a city market, it's a regional market, and we don't obviously control anything outside of the city. As a result, I think we have to keep in mind the idea of short versus long-term competition. It's about, we have to capture as much market share as we can in some ways. Not saying that we should over-incentivize, obviously, we shouldn't. And obviously by this project, I think you can see that we don't want to over-incentivize. But looking at just this segment of the hotel market, the fact that the average occupancy rate for comparable hotels is at almost 75%. Generally speaking, in the hotel world, anything over 70% is considered full occupancy. Once you're over 70%, you're typically losing rooms to other places, because on your high demand nights you're over 100%. So your Friday, Saturday, Sundays you're over 100, and when you go over 100, obviously people are going to be going out into the county or wherever else to get hotel rooms. So I think, especially within this segment of the hotel market, I think we're doing fairly well right now. Looking at the numbers, obviously, we're at the high end of the economic cycle, and things will shift at some point, right? But
And again, to those same points, I think we just need some semblance of a overarching regional understanding of what a region, the hotel market should look like for the region, and what percentage of cities should be looking at, so we have just a general idea of what the need is, how we have, what the room to grow is, et cetera. If you could share not only the invitation to the Urban Land Institute talk on Thursday, but that CVC study you mentioned, I know we probably, do we have it electronically? I don't remember if I do or not.
It was
I'd
part of
certainly
the
take it.
Scott Trade and CDC, the Convention Center discussion.
Oh, that Johnson study, that was, that did not really take a in-depth look at hotel room need and what we currently have.
Okay.
That was a more of a top-level analysis, sort of,
And I think it was particularly related to that project,
Yeah.
but I believe the CDC actually has other
Right.
studies that are
They
done.
do, I don't have that
That
one.
are not
Yeah.
related to that specific project, but the region as a whole
sure.
and the
Yeah.
conventions that they're trying to bring into town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, thanks, that's all I have. Good. I commend the work to bring it, we can't say
Alderman
about it
Gunther.
everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I would echo the Alderwoman from the 20th about how, I thank you for looking at new ways of, doing incentives that are not just a straight tax abatement. But I think one of my questions would be, just this past week, we voted on a hotel, incentivizing a hotel in the old Harry's location on Market using, SID, is that correct? So, so can you just explain a little bit how, like, why, 1 week we're saying that SID is the way to go about doing an incentive versus now saying that this is the way to go about doing an incentive for a hotel? Like, how did you come to that?
Yeah, so actually that project was analyzed quite a while ago. It just happened to be that it got delayed and came forth more recently. But that was another one, I think, where they came in. I think they were asking for 15 years maybe of tax abatement, and their rate of return was not as high. Obviously, it's a different type of hotel. It's a different segment of the market, being that it's sort of like your fast casual, your standard. I think it was Fairfield Inn or whatever. But so they were. Anyway, they were at like a little bit high on their rate of return. We wanted to try and, we wanted to make sure that the rate of return was good enough that they would do the project. But I think we ended up giving them 5 years at 95%, and then the SID was essentially put in place because they still needed, we agreed that they needed a little bit more in order for the project to actually happen, but we didn't want to give it to them in the form of tax abatement. So, so that's what the SID is.
This is already in a SID, so I don't know that can you do a SID within a SID?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's already in there's a Central West End SID.
Okay.
This is actually already in a TIF district too.
Okay, and so in looking at kind of just like the aerial view here, so the KPLR Studios is what looks like this giant beige garage. That's the one that's being torn down. But then you're also building that on the surface parking lot here.
Yeah, and then there's a little garden
And then there's a
just to
little
the north.
garden area
Yeah,
right next
so
to the
we're
cup.
building like a 3-leg table.
Gotcha, okay. Alderwoman Navarro, you had mentioned that you did have a community meeting to talk about it. Can you share kind of a little bit of the community's feeling on adding to the density there? I know I've tried to park over there before, and it's pretty crowded. How did the community feel about adding another hotel in such a tight quarter there?
So we had a public community meeting that was open to all the neighborhood, and then also the Central West End the Central West End Association has a planning and development committee, which is made up of volunteers in the neighborhood who all have background either in development, architecture, urban planning, design, that sort of thing. So they've gone through both of those processes. The neighbors definitely asked questions about parking. The Argyle garage is right across the street, and the developers have an option that you already own, I think, a couple hundred spots in there. So that was of comfort to the neighbors. Also, I think a lot of the people who live in the Central West End recognize that people are using Uber and Lyft and public transit to get to places as well. So there's always a question about parking, but given that this is a hotel development where you're gonna have people coming in from out of town, It's not gonna be the same as putting in, you know, a high-rise apartment right there. And again, like I said, that street is a cut-through. I've had people calling me saying, you know, the sidewalks are a mess, and it's just not a very nice place to be. So people are grateful to see that something's gonna be going in. And the fact that it's not bringing in another restaurant, it's gonna be feeding, it's gonna be getting people out to the restaurants that are there. People are also grateful, for that as well.
Alright, well, yeah, thank you that sounds really great to be able to get so much community input. And so Jonathan, just like to finalize, so after this is built, it's gonna be assessed 100%. Like, you're gonna assess it at what the construction values were, and then all you're doing is just for the next 10 years, just limiting the amount that the assessment can go up.
Grow by 1% a year, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that for people that have been asking for some sort of reform on abatement, that I think this sounds like a really a great way to go about, offering something to be able to meet some of the needs of the developer and for taking the risk, but also to meet some of the demands of the general public of St. Louis that don't want to see us giving 10 or 15-year tax abatements in the Central West End. So no further questions.
Oh, he's back. Man, I thought my overtime was gonna kick in. I need to ask questions, yeah.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you. So these may be, Jonathan, maybe a couple questions for you and then for the developer too. So as built assessment, no more than a 2% increase in every odd year. Is that accurate?
We actually did it 1% every year.
1%, okay.
Yeah.
I think the fact sheet says 2%.
For 10 years, is that right?
Yeah, so it's 10 years from the, so it's not 10 years from stabilization, it's 10 years from
Place of
construction
service?
completion, yeah, place of service.
Okay. And real quick, I know you said it before, but stabilization is defined by when they hit over 70 or 74%?
In this case, the market is 74.5.
Okay, and is that
for
a
comparable hotels.
trailing 1-2 year, or is that the moment?
That
we hit
was last
74
year,
and a half?
that was 2017, it was 74.5%.
Right, okay. So, yeah, but when do you do
Oh.
that calculation? My guess is it based on a trailing year of operation? I
You mean
assume?
like the tax value?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, right, so it is, it's based on the year before, so you're 2000.
Yep.
Right, so.
That's what I was saying, okay. And just some quick questions for the developer. This looks like a pretty dynamic project, so congratulations on everything thus far. Do you have your brand or flag agreement with Marriott solidified? Okay.
Yeah, so that's, the way they work is you have to kind of keep them long as you do the drawings, and so we just kind of keep them in with submittals, but we pay the franchise fee and they're ready to go.
Okay. Good. And what anticipated ADRs are you looking at?
Well, so this is where, Jonathan and I kind of had our back and forth, because obviously going into the crystal ball and figuring out what the RevPAR is gonna be was the ultimate challenge, and that's why we came up with that set of 6 hotels, going from the high side to the Four Seasons all the way down to the Courtyard. And then what we did, because Smith Travel Research has like the STR report, So they give you, so we picked our set of hotels, and then they gave us the forward-looking RevPAR, and so we just plugged that in. So we think, reasonably speaking, that we'll be probably around, $175 a night on an average rate, and that's at probably 72 to 74% occupancy. I mean, it's really, the further you go, obviously, more crystal ball. And the challenge is right now, we're in a very strong hotel environment, and
Might be too hot.
yeah, exactly, and hotels are a high beta asset, and so if we hit another recession, that's the first thing that gets hit. So,
So those feel like, to me, conservative ADRs that could adjust to a dip after 8 or 9 years of economic expansion. One final question. The 32 or almost $33 million of debt that's anticipated, how far are you along with that?
we've got a term sheet from the bank, so we are right now just raising our LP capital, and so the bank's ready to go.
Okay, so that's all through underwriting, or in the process of underwriting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No further questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions on Board Bill 266, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we pass Board Bill 266 out with the DPAS recommendation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the
Or no?
roll, please?
Do we have,
Yes, we're good.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Spencer,
aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Chairman Cone.
Aye.
5 aye votes to grant.
With
Thank you
that,
very much.
Board Bill
Thank you.
266 passes out with the DPAS recommendation. Okay, I do believe that our dear friends from SLGC have made their amendments and are ready for copies to be made. Zach,
He's gonna make
you can get through the door over there. So we're going to take a quick recess for 2 minutes while we wait for copies.
I got you. My kids the other day.
I'm ready.
No recess.
No recess. We will not take, Frank's got the, wait.
No, that isn't.
Oh, wait.
That's not all the new language. They were all the new language.
Yeah.
Which I just put together.
We'll take a break for 2 minutes here. So,
He's gonna come.
Yeah, Dale.
Dale, would you like to take the hot seat next to Alderman Williamson up there?
Come on, Dale.
That'd be great, so, we are, I already told them that we're resuming the meeting. So, our meeting is now officially being resumed. And we have before us an amendment number 1 to Board Bill 204. I'll entertain a motion to put Board Bill, the amendment to Board Bill 204 before the committee.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Chairman Cone.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Okay. Dale, would you
Yes,
do the honor of
If you have a
explaining the
copy
amendment?
of Board Bill 204 in front of you and a copy of the amendment, I'll go through it. On page 1 of the Board Bill 204, towards the bottom, you'll see something that says available 10-year tax abatement. So the first part of this amendment is to strike that and say available 15 years of tax abatement.
Okay.
Then if you go back to page 8 of the original Board Bill, you'll see a section 14, and that section outlines a 10-year tax abatement. So now we're going to take that and we're gonna add the next part of this. You can see, beginning at page 8, line 3, after the words application is provided therein, we're adding all this additional language, which is what provides the method of getting a 15-year tax abatement. Goes on to the next page. I apologize that the copy we had immediately available that I could cut and paste dealt with low-income housing tax credits. So what I've struck out is just the language dealing with low-income housing tax credits, because that doesn't apply to this project. But all the other language is fine. Then, the attachment to Board Bill, attachment B to Board Bill 270, is the actual redevelopment plan. And if you look at that redevelopment plan, at the very top of page 7, it again, section F, deals with a 10-year tax abatement. So the next part of this amendment, which is the third sheet, is dealing with that attachment B, page 7 of that attachment B, section F. Again, we're adding all this same language into that plan that we added into the Board Bill itself. So though it's a very simple thing, changing from 10 to 15, it involves a lot of words.
It wasn't hard, Dale.
No, I got so good at cutting and scotch taping.
Okay, so with that, questions on the amendment to Board Bill 204, Alderman Moore,
No question.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Ditto.
Alderman Gunther,
No questions.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No, sir.
Is there a motion that we amend Board Bill 204 with Amendment 1?
I move that,
We accept Amendment 1 to Board Bill 204.
so moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Chairman Combs.
Aye.
5 ayes votes.
Okay, now we'll get you clean versions of this over.
That would be great. So now we have to make a motion to
gonna say, we'll still pass
do
this.
pass 204 as amended out of committee.
I move that we pass Board Bill 204 as amended out of that committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Call for
Previous
previous
roll?
roll. Any objection to previous roll? Hearing none, Board Bill 204 as amended passes out of the Neighborhood Development Committee. That concludes our business for today. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
You're adjourned until the next session.